Hi friends, welcome back to ARC Tutorials. This is Mean Stack Complete Live Project Development from scratch. In the last episode, we started developing the dynamic APIs for customers module. We completed the post method, which is to create a new customer. Today we'll continue building the CRUD operations. Today we'll implement get customers, get find a particular customer. Also we'll implement update and delete. This is part 10 of the Mean Stack Complete Live project development from scratch. Please do support this project by subscribing, by liking, by commenting, by sharing these tutorials with your friends and colleagues. Also, please do consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/arctutorials. Thank you in advance. Let's get started. So today we are in the 10th episode. We are continuing to develop our customers APIs. That's the customer's feature that we are building, and we are doing the API development for CRUD features. So for our friends who are joining us new, what's CRUD? Create, read, update, delete. Those are the essential endpoints that we require for any major module or feature that you will work or develop. That's what we are developing. This would kind of serve as a blueprint for all our modules that we'll be developing in this particular series. Let's get started. So story so far, we developed the post, right, which is the add endpoint in the last episode. So let's fire up our application. However, you don't need the UI application because today we are mainly doing the APIs. But then it's always a good thing, like I told you in the last episode, that always refer to the UI code first, right? UI screens, so that you get an idea about what data you might need and what data you're sending. So that's really important. All right, so that being said, the next one in the API, loans API folder. So we will get started. So we are doing the get endpoint, right? So in the last episode, we added the customers, right? So now I'll start with the development of finding the customers, right? Let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. We'll use this for getting all customers. So I'm going to say list customer/list will be my endpoint, which would give me all the, which will find basically all the customers, right? So what we are going to do, we will remove this here, and then we created the customer model, right? So we are going to use that. But before that, what we will do, we are telling, usually what happens is you will get customers for a particular account or a particular some condition, right? Or a by ID or something. So, but in my case, I'm just saying, let's get all the customers. So what you'll do is you will use customer model dot, and you'll use the method find. So find will bring you all the methods, all the documents that are available in your uh, in our database, right? In our collection basically. So I'm going to use the word here, and I'm going to say customer list response, right? So now we will use this to get all the details. All right, so now I'm going to say if error, and like I told you in the last episode, we will implement some kind of a common global error handling because we don't want to repeat our code, right? And you can tell that how good the code is by just looking at the code. So we need to write code which is generic, which is reusable. So we are going to write some handling of that down the line, but not today. So unable to find customers, right? That's your error message. Okay, if it fails. Else, what we will do is um, we don't need a message really. So what we are going to say is record count, right? So usually this will be used to display how many records are there, or even for pagination purpose. So we will say customer list response dot length is the length. So I'm going to use const length or record count equal to this, and we are going to send that as part of our response. And finally, once you get the response, you'll say results and send this customer list response, right? So that completes this particular feature. What we are doing here, we have an endpoint get and we are saying slash list and customer model, find all the documents and return them, right? So looks good. Let's fire up, run start. So once we do this, we will also need some kind of an endpoint to handle um, the details. So for a particular customer, I'll do that after this. So we are doing a get and we are saying get all the list of customers. So we got all the list of customers, that is total 5 records, right? So this is how we have the endpoint which will give us all the list of customers. Now let's write a specific one and say I need a endpoint to get a particular customer's details. I don't want all, right? This is especially useful when you do a use case which says get a details of a customer, right? Get details of a customer, of a specific or a selected customer, right? Customer. Okay, so now here I'm going to say instead of list I'm going to say view, right? Customer slash view would give me details, but now the trick here is I need to capture the ID that I will pass. So I'm going to say user ID equal to request dot query dot sorry, right? So request dot query dot what is the ID we are passing? User ID. All right, so this is the user ID that we will say. Now we are going to use a method which says find by ID, right? So what this does is essentially will find a particular customer for us and we should be able to retrieve data of that particular customer, right? So we'll use something similar for search also. You'll see that we are using dot find by ID or find, right, using a query. So we can do all of that. So let's do that now and let's first implement by ID. Okay, so we captured the user ID here. Now we have to pass it. Now remember friends, you don't have to pass query because we are saying that it is by ID. So what happens is you just pass it the ID of the document ID, right? So what is this user ID? It's the document ID and then followed by the method. That's all we have to do, right? So again, this is not a customer list. I'll just say customer response and we will pass it here, right? So we know that the length is always 1, right, in this case, but it is still a good idea to send it, right? That is because in the UI you can write ng if condition and say whether your whether the count is more than 1 or not. All right, so unable to find the customer, right? That's the response we will send if we are not able to find the document. Alrighty, so we got the endpoint which is view. We will send the user ID and that will use find by ID and then capture the details and do the customer length and return it. Perfect. So let's test it. Alright, so we got this. So I'm going to say again get and let's copy this document ID of this customer by the name Lisa and we are going to say view and we will pass in the query parameter ID. We'll pass the same document ID what I copied here. Now let's run it. So now you see we got only one result, right? We got only one result which is of that particular customer, right? And did we send the count? Yeah, we did send the count. Uh, it's not visible here. Let's quickly check. So we have the view endpoint and we said there is a record count and customer response. So since this is only one, it is not able to find it, right? So that's why it doesn't make sense to send for one thing, but you can definitely check if it's an empty object or you have result or not. All right, so that being said, so here now we are able to get a particular customer details, right? Like here we are able to get the details. Now I'm going to send a wrong document ID. I'll add some more invalid numbers. So it says unable to find a customer. So that means both our use cases are working fine, right? Perfect. Now that is our find a particular customer, right? Now we will also need some kind of search criteria, right? So that is again also a get call with find, and we have to pass some params for that. That will implement just maybe little down the line. Let's complete the CRUD operations. So now I will move on to put, which is to update the customer, right? So I'm going to borrow some code here so that I don't type again and again. So yeah, so I copied this code, paste it here, right? So what I'm doing here essentially, I'm capturing the user ID again because we have to update, right? So now we are going to say find one and update, right? Now you can use find method to update multiple documents in one go as well. Okay, remember that. So but right now our idea is we are updating only one customer, right? At some point we may need to add more endpoints to kind of update multiple documents in one go, right? So that is also perfectly fine. We'll do it as and when we reach there. Today is not that day. Alrighty, so we got the find one by ID, and right, so the other way is also you can use dot update method, right? So we can use update also and pass the details that we want to send, right? Like for example, I can send a query instead of user ID. We can send update all the documents where this criteria is met, right? So we can do this update directly, but like I said, we are for now we will focus on only one document, which is find by ID and update. So let's go back, put this code here, find by ID and update. So what this takes three parameters. First is the ID of the document that you're updating. So in our case, it's the user ID, which is the document. The next one will be the new data that it needs to be updated, right? So if you remember, we added this object. Let's copy it again and put it here, right? So we don't need this new customer now because we just need to pass the JSON data, right? So now here I'm going to update the data, Mary 2, some phone number. So what we are doing, whenever we call this endpoint, it should update with this data, right? That's what we are telling it. All right, so now find one and update. What is the new object that we want to update? It's the customer object, this one. This is the new data, right, that we want to update. So that's what we are sending, and we are saying unable to update the customer, right? So now what we are doing, we are telling it explicitly that find that details, right? And then what you should do, you should run it and update this particular ID. Okay, so that's pretty much that we are doing. So let's run this and see the output. All right, so let's get started and save it and close this here and fire up again. All right, so it's up. Now let's go here. Let's see what's the endpoint. The endpoint is put, and the endpoint is put method, and we are saying slash update, right? And we are saying that we will pass the user ID, right? So again, copy this document ID, user ID, and paste the document and hit send. We should see the updated data, right? So it is now you see test2 some numbers, right? It got updated. Now let's try and read the data, but let's verify, right? So it is 200. Okay, but last name is different than what we had here. So let's see why. So let's refresh again, and we get the data, which is Lisa, Mary, test2, and the new phone number, right? Similarly, when you list, you should see the latest data, updated data. So go to get endpoint and customer list, and you see Lisa, Mary, and the details updated. Similarly, if you want to find a particular customer details, I'm going to, so that's the benefit you see of building endpoints. You can just get the data whatever you want. So now I'm using view customer, passing the document ID, it's getting me the latest data. So it updated the details and also got us the updated data back as a response. there can be multiple updates. Like I said, for that we'll have to use this model dot update with a query, right? So you will need at some point, we will need in this application to update multiple documents, right? So we can pass that query here along with our instead of user ID, we can pass customer ID, right? So we can say this as, say, department, right? Where department is, say, CRM, update all the documents which are of this particular criteria, right? So we'll do that at some point. So first let's build the blueprint of all the CRUD operations. So we got add, we got list, we got view, and we got update, right? So similarly, we'll have to do delete, which is again a delete endpoint. So you can just borrow some code again. So see guys, remember, don't start to write from scratch. That's never the good approach. Always try and reuse the code that you have written to get things done faster. That's my approach, and I'm sure a lot of people will also definitely agree that that's one of the good methods to do that. Alright, so for the delete, I have the method delete, endpoint name is slash delete, find by ID and delete. Again, I'm passing the user ID, unable to delete. If it's true, get the response, maybe throw in a message, right? And say user deleted successfully, right? Similarly, you can add a message to the previous update as well and say that the user was updated, user updated successfully, right? And similarly close here, right? User added, you unable to find. Okay, so these are all set. Let's test the delete now. So here again we are using a simple method, find by ID and delete. We can again see whenever you use find, remember that we can send params, right? Query like delete all the customers from department XYZ, right? So you can delete all in one go as well. Here we are doing a specific deletion. Again, copy the user ID, put it here. Now the method is delete and send it in the endpoint, put it in the param, copy the document ID, all set. So now we should see a deletion object, right? So this is now deleted, user deleted successfully. So now let's list it, and you should not see the Lisa customer, right? So see mark, we see mark. So this is the test at test.com. So this is a different document, not the one that we sent, right? So let's try deleting this also, right? Or I can show you one more thing, like deleting all the first name where it is mark, right? So that's a new use case you can learn. Let me do that. So once I do this, I think you'll get an idea of how to do update also for multiple, right? So this I'm going to say delete multiple, right? Delete multiple customers. That's the delete, or delete hyphen many, right? Or multiple, whichever name you give, right? I'll leave it up to you for that. And here we are going to find, and here we are going to pass the name, right? Like first name, like the first name here. Just see that the structure is correct. Sometimes it won't work because the name of the keys is different or something like that. So make sure that we don't get into that. So now we are saying customer model dot find, right? And in not dot find, dot delete many, or right? So we can say delete many, or we can use and say delete um, delete many, because here we are trying to delete multiple things in the same go. um, Users deleted successfully, and no need to get the response back, right? Just a message that users deleted successfully. Wherever there is first name and mark, go and delete all the documents, right? That's what we are saying. So let's go test it out, fire it up. So try practicing along with me, start coding. Let me know if you have any issues, because till you practice, this won't it won't be of much help, right? So I'm saying delete multiple. I'm not passing any params now because I've just put the directly the filter criteria here. to delete, but ideally we would do this dynamically. We'll convert that sometime down the line. Alrighty, so delete method and delete hyphen multiple sent. So it says users deleted successfully. Now let's go and list and see if we are getting them from the document or not. We should not see any entry with mark. So here you see we have not got anything. We got a record, one record, which is only Lisa, right? So that completes all our circle to get the blueprint of customers model. I will fine tune some of the things with you again, like making them dynamic. Maybe I'll use the next episode to convert all of this data which is now static into dynamic, and then we can start integrating with our UI application. It's a lot of work. I'm trying my best to put as much as I can. I hope you appreciate my time and effort. In the next episode, we will continue building the customer's API. We'll make it dynamic so that we can just copy paste for other modules. If you like my work and tutorials, please do consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/arctutorials. Thank you so much for joining. Please do subscribe to my channel, like, share, comment. Thank you again.